Hello, and thank you for watching our webinar on the literacy coaches and reading specialists reporting technical assistance. Today, we will provide an overview of the literacy coaches and reading specialists or LCRS program, the allowed expenditures, an overview of reporting, and then we will close out. This technical assistance webinar is provided by the Professional Learning Support Division at the CDE. My name is Jennifer Howarder, and I am an Education Programs Consultant in the Professional Learning Innovations Office. Now let's go into an overview of the LCRS program. Assembly Bill 181, Section 137, Chapter 52, Statutes of 2022, authorizes the LCRS program. The sum of $250 million was appropriated from the general funds to the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, or the SSPI, for the LCRS program. Of the total funding, the SSPI allocated $225 million to eligible school sites to develop school literacy programs, employ and train literacy coaches and reading and literacy specialists, and develop and implement interventions for students in need of targeted literacy support. Senate Bill 114, Section 104, Chapter 48 of 2023 authorizes an additional sum of $250 million to augment the LCRS program. Of the total funding, $248 million was allocated to eligible school sites for the same purposes as the first allocation. Let's move into allowable uses of funds. These allowable uses provide the structure for the reports that we'll be asking you to complete. LCRS funds are to be used for developing school literacy programs, employing and training literacy coaches and reading specialists, and developing and implementing interventions for students in need of targeted literacy support. The authorizing statute provides additional information on expenditures for school literacy programs. This includes developing a school literacy plan that includes goals and actions to improve literacy acquisition for pupils in preschool, if applicable, and grades kindergarten through 3 inclusive. The plan shall identify metrics to measure progress toward the goals and actions. Hiring at least one literacy coach or reading and literacy specialist per school to support educators and pupils in improving literacy instruction and pupil outcomes. Increasing access to evidence-based literacy instruction through strategies including but not limited to any of the following: providing bilingual reading specialists to support dual language acquisition and English language development, or ELD programs, developing and implementing culturally responsive curriculum and instruction, providing professional development, or PD, for educators and school leaders and literacy instruction and the use of data to identify and support struggling pupils, providing PD for educators and school leaders regarding the implementation of the English Language Arts ELD framework and the use of data to support effective instruction. Establishing an evidence-based family literacy initiative, which may include but is not limited to the following: family literacy plans that identify literacy and biliteracy goals, benchmarks, and roles for all family members. Family literacy home visiting programs, including but not limited to Promotora family literacy outreach specialists. Local educational agencies, or LEAs, may establish literacy and biliteracy home visits to engage families and how best to support their pupils and every family member in reaching their literacy goals. Extended day, summer, or weekend family institutes related to literacy and biliteracy. LEAs are encouraged to work with in-house expanded learning programs to establish literacy and biliteracy support programs and literacy enrichment programs during after-school, weekend, and summer hours. And finally, public library family literacy partnerships, including but not limited to digital tools to support whole family literacy. Now let's start talking about the reporting requirements. Annual reports will be due no later than September 30th of each year. A reporting template is available on the CDE LCRS webpage at https://www.cde.ca.gov/pd/ps/lcrsprogram.asp. The CDE is requiring annual reporting as a response to requests for detailed information in the legislative report, to justify future funding opportunities, and to confirm funding is being appropriately used and tracked at the local level. Note that this report is at the LEA level. However, we are asking for site level data as well. Site level data will be reported in the site level data collection spreadsheet. So in addition to completing the report online, you will email this spreadsheet to plio@cde.ca.gov, and I will go over the contents of that spreadsheet later on in this presentation. Here are the reporting deadlines for cohort 1. Note that each reporting period is reported on September 30th of each year, with the exception of this year for January 31st, and the final report due in spring of 2027. These are the reporting deadlines for cohort 2. Note that your first report is due January 31st. However, the subsequent reports are due September 30th, with the exception of the final report due in spring of 2028. So what makes a complete report? 2 things. First, submitting the online LEA level report. And then number 2, submitting the site level data collection spreadsheet to plio@cde.ca.gov. So we'll start with the online report. You can access the report on the LCRS webpage. Login information will be sent to our primary contact on file. If you have not received it or lost it, please contact us. When you're in the report, answer all applicable questions on each page. Answers will be automatically saved when you go to the next page. If you want to manually save, you can select the Save button. At the end of the report, you must select the Submit button to finalize your submission. Now let's talk about the report itself. The report has several sections, including contact information, funds report overview, literacy coaches and reading specialists information, school and family literacy plan, professional learning, student achievement, and the submission. This online report collects data at the LEA level. Some LEAs may be in both cohort 1 and cohort 2. For the online report, since it is at the LEA level, you will combine both reporting periods for this upcoming report. So, for example, if your district has sites in both cohort 1 and cohort 2, you'll be reporting data for July 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. The site level spreadsheet will give you the opportunity to break things out by cohort. First is contact information. This is relatively straightforward. We are asking for you to input the contact information for the program administrator of the LCRS program. This person will be our primary contact for any questions we have. Next, we are asking you to input the contact information for the fiscal agent if they are different from the program administrator. This person will be our primary contact for any budget questions we have or budget information. If the program administrator is the same as the fiscal agent, you do not have to enter the information twice. For this section, we are asking you to provide the dollar amount of the LCRS funds used for this fiscal year. Remember that if you're in both cohorts, you will combine the spending for both cohorts. If you haven't spent LCRS funds this year, you can report the total as 0. However, if you haven't spent any LCRS funds this year, we will ask you to provide a reason why and your anticipated time frame for spending the funds. So note that even if you didn't spend any LCRS funds this year, you still do have to complete the report only for this particular question. And finally, we are asking for a brief executive summary of this year's activities, including how funds were spent to employ literacy coaches and reading specialists, how funds were used to develop and implement school literacy programs, and how expenditures impacted student literacy achievement, including for student subgroups. For the literacy coaches, reading specialists, and bilingual reading specialist sections on this page, you'll report similar information: the number hired, the amount of funding used to hire, the amount of funding used for other purposes related to these positions, including details on those other purposes, the total expenditure for each position, whether services were provided by a vendor, and if so, the vendor names and specific services provided. Additionally, we will ask you to report how many reading specialists hired have either the added authorization or the specialist credential. And finally, we will ask you to report on any successes or challenges. We have included checkboxes for commonly stated successes and challenges, and we'll then ask that you provide additional details on any success or challenge selected. Note that if you have not hired staff for some or all of these positions, you would simply indicate 0 in the appropriate box. You can indicate yes or no if you have used funds to develop and/or implement a school and family literacy plan. If you select yes, we will ask you additional questions. If no, you will skip to the next section of the report. For the school literacy plan section, much of what we'll ask you is in the site-level data collection spreadsheet. However, in the online report, we'll ask about the number of public libraries your district has partnered with to provide support for your school and family literacy plans. Because this allowable expense can have a lot of different elements to it, we are asking you to report on the expenditure type, amount, and details. This is organized by object code. Finally, as in the last section, we will ask you to report on successes and challenges. This section starts out with providing an overview of the professional learning you've offered using LCRS funds. Note that this does not include the professional learning you have received from the county office leads for the LCRS Educator Training Grants. It is only the professional learning that you have offered using your LCRS funds. Note again that if you are in both cohorts, we are asking you to combine the reporting periods. We will ask you about the number of participants, how many of those participants were district-based, how many of those participants were site-based, the total number of professional learning hours offered, the total number of professional learning opportunities offered. And then we will ask for a breakdown of the classification of the participants, including classroom teachers, literacy coaches, reading specialists, administrators, paraprofessionals, and other classified staff. Finally, we will ask you the type of professional learning offered. You can select English language arts, English language development framework and literacy instruction, culturally responsive curriculum and instruction, and use of data to support effective instruction in struggling students. You can select one or all of these categories. Depending on the category you choose, you will be directed to that part of the report. Regardless of the ones you select, we ask you to report on the same elements: the number of professional learning events in that category, the professional classification of the participants, and the total expenditure amount for that category. After you provide information on these categories, we will ask similar questions as the other sections: the expenditure type, amount, and detail, and any successes and/or challenges. This is the last section of the online reports. Much of what we will ask will be in the site-level data collection spreadsheet. However, in the online report, we will ask about the locally adopted assessments that your LCRS sites are using for transitional kindergarten through grade 3. Finally, we'll go ahead and submit. The authorizing official must type in their name in the field to certify the accuracy of the reports. Select Next, and then Submit. You will be provided with a confirmation number and printable version of your responses. Okay, now let's switch over to the site-level data collection spreadsheet. I'm going to provide an overview of what we're asking, and then I'll take you on a tour of the spreadsheet. Remember that in this spreadsheet, we are collecting at the site level and by cohort. So for the site-level data collection spreadsheet, we ask for cohort 1, the funding spent, literacy plans, and assessment data, and cohort 2, funding spent, literacy plans, and assessment data. For each cohort, you will complete the site name, the county, district, school, or CDS codes, and the dollar amount of LCRS funds used this reporting period. Remember, you are doing this for cohort 1 and cohort 2. If you have sites in only one cohort, you will only complete the worksheets for that particular cohort. If you have not completed any site and family literacy plans, you do not have to complete this section. If you have, though, you will share the site names and CDS codes, as well as the goals and/or actions of the school and family literacy plans you have developed, the intended metrics to measure progress on those goals and actions, the number of family literacy outreach specialists and languages that they speak, the number of home visits, extended day events, summer events, and weekend events, as well as the number of families served. Finally, we will ask you about your local assessment data. You will use the data that you collected closest to the end of the reporting period for this report. Remember that Cohort 1 and Cohort 2 have different end dates for this reporting period. We are asking you to report on the percentage of students meeting or exceeding standards according to your local assessment data. We need this broken down by subgroup, including African American, American Indian, Asian, English learner, Filipino, foster youth, Hispanic, homeless, Pacific Islander, socioeconomically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, 2 or more races, and whites. Now let's take a moment for a walkthrough of our spreadsheets. This is the LCRS site-level data collection tool. This workbook has several worksheets, and we will go over each of them. This first worksheet is the instructions worksheet. It provides an overview of the worksheets contained within the workbook, the cohort reporting dates for cohorts 1 and 2, as well as the instructions to submit both the LEA level reports online and the spreadsheets. The next 3 worksheets are for cohort 1. Remember that you only need to complete these worksheets if you have sites in cohort 1. For funding spent in cohort 1, you will enter the site name, CDS code, and the dollar amount of LCRS funds used for this reporting period. The reporting periods are at the top of this worksheet. For literacy plans for cohort 1, you will enter the site name, CDS code, the goals and actions of the plan, the metrics used to measure progress, the number of family literacy outreach specialists, the languages spoken by family literacy outreach specialists, the number of home visits performed by those family literacy outreach specialists, the number of extended day events related to literacy, the number of families served at those extended day events, the number of summer events related to literacy, the number of families served at those summer events, and the number of weekend events related to literacy, and the number of families served at those weekend events. For local assessment data for cohort 1, you will enter the percentage of students meeting or exceeding standards according to your local assessment data for each subgroup. Use data that you collected closest to the end of the reporting period of this report. The reporting periods are at the top of this worksheet. Next, we have cohort 2. Remember that you only need to complete these worksheets if you have sites in cohort 2. For funding spent in cohort 2, you will enter the site name, CDS code, and the dollar amounts of LCRS funds used for this reporting period. The reporting periods are at the top of this worksheet. For literacy plans for cohort 2, you will enter the site name, CDS code, goals and actions of the plan, metrics used to measure progress, the number of family literacy outreach specialists, the languages spoken by the family literacy outreach specialists, the number of home visits performed by family literacy outreach specialists, the number of extended day events related to literacy, the families served at those extended day events, the number of summer events related to literacy, the number of families served at those summer events, and the number of weekend events related to literacy, and the number of families served at those weekend events. On our final worksheet here, we have local assessment data for cohort 2. You will enter the percentage of students meeting or exceeding standards according to your local assessment data for each subgroup. Use data that you have collected closest to the end of the reporting period for this report. The reporting periods are at the top of this worksheet. That concludes our overview of the reports. Here are some final resources for you as you are completing this. First is our LCRS program webpage at https://www.cde.ca.gov/pd/ps/lcrsprogram.asp. And then we have the cohort funding web pages for both cohorts 1 and 2. So if you weren't sure which cohort you were in, you could check out both of these for the list of all of the LEAs and sites. So first for cohort 1, we have https://www.cde.ca.gov/fg/fo/r14/ litcoaches22results.asp. And then for the second cohort, https://www.cde.ca.gov/FG/FO/litcoaches23result.asp. And then if you have any other questions, please do feel free to reach out to us at plio@cde.ca.gov. Thank you so much for watching this webinar and for submitting your report.